Do you ever feel like the toughest battles that you face aren't the ones happening around you, but are actually the ones taking place inside of your own heart? I'm talking about those moments when anger, frustration, or envy start to overwhelm you. What if I told you that these struggles aren't just about the world outside, but instead are about something deeper within you? Well, today we're going to explore what Jesus says about these internal battles and how you can start overcoming them. So take a deep breath, open your heart, and get ready to find the peace that only a transformed heart can bring. I want to welcome everyone to today's episode. I'm Father John Mozingo, and I'm so glad that you've joined me for this conversation. Today we're jumping into a topic that I believe touches each and every one of us, something we all experience but often struggle to talk about openly. We're going to explore the battle within, overcoming internal struggles. Have you ever felt like the biggest challenges you face aren't the ones happening around you, but are the ones happening inside of you? Maybe it's frustration, maybe it's anger, maybe it's envy, or even just a sense of dissatisfaction that you can't quite shake. Well, today we're going to explore what Jesus says about these internal battles and how we can start to overcome them. We'll be looking at Mark chapter 7, verses 1 through 23, where Jesus teaches that it's not what comes from the outside that defiles us, but what comes from within. You know, this is such a powerful truth, and it's just as relevant today as it was 2,000 years ago. So let's get into the text and figure this out. In Mark 7, Jesus is having a conversation with the Pharisees. Now, these Pharisees were very concerned about following religious rituals like washing hands before eating. They believed that it was these external practices that were keeping them clean before God. But Jesus challenges this idea by saying something radical. He tells them that it's not what goes into a person that defiles them, but instead it is what comes out from within. Now let's unpack that. Jesus is pointing out that our biggest problems aren't caused by external things like what we eat or what we drink or even the people around us. Instead, our biggest struggles come from within our own hearts. So it's these thoughts, these attitudes, these desires that come from inside of us that can lead us astray. Think about it like this. Imagine you're driving a car and suddenly a warning light pops up on the dashboard. It's easy to get frustrated and think, oh my, why is this happening now? What is wrong with this car? But that light is just telling you about a problem that already exists inside the engine. Now you can ignore the light, you can blame the car, but until you address what's happening under the hood, the problem will not go away. And you know what? The same is true for our lives. You see, the issue we face often has roots in what's going on inside of our own hearts. So how do we deal with these internal struggles? Well, the first step is to recognize them. Jesus lists a bunch of things that he has coming from within everyone. He lists things like evil thoughts and envy and greed and pride and foolishness. So if we're honest, we can probably see ourselves in some of these. But recognizing these struggles is just the beginning. Think of a bottle of drink, soda, pop, whatever it is that you call it, that has been shaken. And when you open it, all that pressure inside causes it to explode everywhere. The shaking didn't create the soda inside. It just revealed what was already there. And in our lives, when we get shaken by stress or conflict or challenges, what comes out is often what's been building up inside. Recognizing inside is the first step to dealing with it. But here's the good news. We don't have to fix this on our own. Jesus came to offer us something far better than just a list of rules to follow. He offers us a transformed heart. In the Old Testament, God promised to give his people a new heart, a heart of flesh instead of a heart of stone. And through Jesus, that promise is fulfilled. When we invite him into our lives, he begins to change us from the inside out. Think of it like a caterpillar transforming into a butterfly. The caterpillar doesn't just try harder to become a butterfly, it goes through a complete metamorphosis. This change is something that happens from the inside out. And that's what God wants to do in our hearts. He wants to transform us into something new. But this transformation isn't a one-time event. It's a daily process. And there are practical steps we can take to guard our hearts and continue growing in this transformation. So, the first is to spend time with God daily. Just like we need food every day, we need spiritual nourishment. Spend time in prayer and reading the Bible. This helps us align our hearts with God's truth. Next, be honest about your struggles. Don't pretend you've got it all together. Confess your struggles to God and ask for his help. You might also consider talking to a trusted friend or a pastor or priest who can pray with you and offer support. Third, replace negative thoughts. When you catch yourself thinking negatively, replace those thoughts with God's truth. For example, if you're feeling envious, remind yourself of the blessings in your life and thank God for them. And last, choose forgiveness. Holding on to bitterness or anger only hurts us. Choose to forgive others, just as God has forgiven you. This doesn't mean what they did was okay, but it releases you from carrying that burden. Imagine your heart as a garden. If you don't regularly tend to it, weeds will start to grow and they eventually will grow and take over, choking out the flowers and the plants. But if you spend a little time each day pulling out the weeds and caring for the plants, the garden will thrive. You know, our hearts are like that garden. If we don't regularly tend to them, the weeds of anger and bitterness and negativity will take over. But if we guard our hearts and care for them, we'll see the fruits of the Spirit grow in our lives. So here it is. The battle within us is real, but the good news is that we don't have to fight it alone. Jesus is ready to help us, to change our hearts, and to give us the strength that we need to overcome these struggles. Well, as we wrap up today's episode, I want to encourage you to take a moment and reflect. What's going on in your heart today? What struggles are you facing within? And how can you invite God into those areas of your life? Well, thank you so much for joining me today. If this conversation has resonated with you, I encourage you to share it with someone who might need to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and more conversations like this one can come your way. Until next time, remember that you're not alone in this battle. God is with you, and He's working in your heart.